mentioned in the past that the Chumash Devarim is very different. Has a very special spirit in it. That this is Moshe Rabbeinu himself speaking to us. He's not just giving us the words from Hashem. He is himself speaking to us. Within the Chumash Dvarim itself, this is at least my feel. Parshas Eikev is very, very special. And it has that quality in a very open and blatant way. Blatant, open, straight out. I always used to refer to Parshas Eikev as Moshe Rabbeinu is running a Fabrengen. He is not even teaching anything. He's Fabrengen. That's what Parshas Eikev is. In Parshas Eikev, to the best of my recollection, there are no mitzvahs except for one, the last parsha of Kriyishma, Bo'yim Shemeya. Otherwise, there are no mitzvahs in the parsha. The whole parsha is Moshe is in effect encouraging Eden, inspiring them, urging them, calling them that they should remember their experience, that they should remember their experience, they should reflect on it, and get the strength and inspiration for the future. This is the passion. As an aside, I said that Parshas Eikev is a Fabrengen. What is the difference between a Fabrengen and a class, and a lecture? The difference is that in a lecture, it is necessary that everything is presented in very clear, precise terms, defined, and it develops in a sequence. Develops. It's built. It builds up. Huh? Sequence, order. So that after the lecture, the student can go and review the lecture exactly the way it was given, think it through, and try to further delve into it. In other words, a lecture consists of the structure of what is being taught. Fabrengen focuses in on a totally different realm, totally different aspect. A Fabrengen wants to call the attention to the significance and the spirit of what is being learned. Not the actual learning, but the spirit behind it. The life, the neshama. when you talk in terms of structure, this is called, in Hasidic terms, it's called shmiya, hearing. You listen to the words, you listen to the definitions, and you get to understand what is being taught. If I'm bringing the experiences not at the level of hearing, it's at the level of experiencing. It's seeing, it's sight. What is the difference between sight and hearing, amongst many others? That in hearing, you hear each detail as it comes individually. In seeing, you take one glance and you see the whole thing. And when you see the whole thing, you see something that in hearing you can't even describe. For instance, you look at a forest. What is a forest? An accumulation of many trees. Forest. Many trees. So, in terms of hearing, there is no such entity called a forest. There's no forest, there are trees. If you have many trees, so then that forms many trees, a group of trees. When you look, you don't look at the trees at all. You see a forest. And the forest represents to you some kind of intricate situation, intricate, involved, confusing situation. And this is why a forest is the place for animals. They hide in it, they can find their way around in a hiding way, whereas one tree is nothing. It's the forest that creates this hideout. You know? So this is a small illustration, and nobody needs an illustration to understand the difference between sight and hearing, but just to be able to focus in and relate to what we're going to discuss. In sight, we recognize, we are looking at something totally different than what we are describing. When you have a building, a house, and it's built of bricks, so when you want to describe this building, you're going to say it's built of bricks. When you are seeing the building, you're seeing the architecture, you're seeing its message, its design. You're not even seeing the brick. It's completely different. You are paying attention to a totally different thing. In reality, in sight, you're paying attention, as I said before, to the soul, to a much more significant aspect than what you can describe in words. Words is the means to build it. But what are you building? An idea that you have in your mind. The idea you do not see. You're not here. You cannot describe, but you can see it. This is what sight is. And this is the focus of Farbrengen. I said that I saw Farbrengen. This is the Farbrengen. Farbrengen is you discuss all the various experiences to the point where you begin to recognize and to see what really was happening. Not the specific things, but what's really taking place. And what does it mean for the present, and what does it mean for the future? This was at the time, this was the last month that Moshe Rabbeinu was alive with us in the desert before his passing, and then Yidden, of course, were preparing to enter Eretz Yisrael, to cross the Yarden and enter Yisrael. This is the end of the journey in the desert. And Moshe Rabbeinu is bringing with the Yidden, and is preparing them for this entry, for going in Eretz Yisrael. And the Yidden come back to the Moshe and they say to him, there is no comparison. In Eretz Yisrael, we are going to have to use our guns to fight our way in. And once there, we're going to have to start building homes. We're not going to have the heavenly clouds protecting us. We're going to have to start plow the fields and sow and reap and thresh, the process of making bread. How do you compare to what we have now? We had the heavenly clouds on all sides of us, protected in every which way. Food came right down to as if it was coming down to our mouths. Food, drink, clothing, as Moshe Rabbeinu describes in this parsha in the beginning, a little bit and a little later more. Clothing, to clothe, we didn't notice it. We had no worry about the clothing. We didn't have to worry about anything. How do you compare to what we are now facing? We are scared. How are we going to face the enemy? How are we going to face all the challenges of an organized, civilized life? For this reason, the Moshe goes through exactly, in detail, what Eden experienced in the desert. But he is pointing out not the exact thing that happened, but the level, the miraculous aspect of it. What it really meant. You went through a desert, and you went through a huge desert. It's called the Midbar HaGodel, the great desert. HaNoira, the awesome desert. And it was full of scorpions, it was full of serpents and snakes. So the Eden said, but we didn't see these snakes. We didn't see the scorpions. So Moshe Rabbeinu says, you know why you didn't see them? Not because they were not there, but because Hashem carried you. And this aspect of your experience, this is what you have to take with you. The experience of walking through a desert and dealing with scorpions and dealing with snakes is not going to help you in Eretz Yisrael. It has nothing to do with this experience. This practice is unnecessary in Eretz Yisrael. You're coming into a different world, to a different life. But the experience of how it was dealt with, how you got through it, that is exactly the same. This is how you're going to to carry through and enter its soul. This is what's going to happen in the future. Except that in the future, you are going to see the scorpions, you are going to see the snakes. But now that you have had all that experience, it is up to you to recognize that you have nothing to fear. Till now, you were protected to the point where you didn't even have to be concerned about it. But you know clearly that this was a miracle. This was not a natural thing. So that if you reflect on this past, on the past 40 years, how you traveled and all the experience that you've had, none of these are experiences that have a practical implication for your future. But the spirit of that experience is exactly what you have to carry with you. The only difference is that up until now, it was given to you, milmaila. Now, you have to relate to it intellectually. You have to reflect on it. And you have to remember it. And you have to draw from your own soul that insight to understand that wherever you are, the truth doesn't change. The truth doesn't change. That you can only present in this overall and general presentation. This is why I say this is a Fabrengen setting. Because in every aspect that Moshe Rabbeinu mentions over here, he mentions in context of reflect and think about it and see what actually happened. What if could you possibly explain this rationally, naturally? No way. And therefore, Moshe Rabbeinu comes and says to you, and you approach Eretz Yisrael, and you start thinking to yourself, how am I going to face these mighty nations? I have to conquer them, subdue them, either drive them out of Yisrael or kill them out. I have to fight a mighty armies. How am I going to do it? You learned that already right in the beginning of the Parsha. Moshe Rabbeinu says to them, you should not fear them. Why? Because you should remember your own experience. But Moshe, our experience was, we were told, stay back, don't do anything, it'll be taken care of for you. Moshe Rabbeinu says, yes, that's in that respect it's different. But it's exactly the same situation. Except now that you have grown up, you're 40 years old, so to speak, as a nation. Now you have the ability to express it with your own intellect, your own conviction. Is it possible to have some kind of air movement here? Yeah. I see that. Among the things that Moshe Rabbeinu mentions I mentioned before, and there's a sikha from Rebbe on this. Moshe says that you went through this great desert, Nochosh, Sorov, V'Yakrov, V'Tzimoy, and Asherei Moy. And the Rebbe explains that the point there that Moshe was making was that to impress on us the principle that we, Eden, are carried, we have the strength of Hashem with us. Our job, our mission in life and in the world is to represent the godly presence in the world. This is our mission. Even though we have to go into Eretz Yisrael and build and work with our hands, and ultimately all that is to build the Beis Hamikdash and to transform the world and to reveal godliness. So therefore, when you approach the desert, you can approach the desert in two ways. You can approach the desert the way you went through the desert in the past 40 years. You paid no attention to it. You just went right through it. Why? Because you trusted the Medrash. Or you can stop there and say, wow, this is a desert. And it's a big desert. And it's an awesome desert. And it's full of scorpions and snakes. This fear, this concern itself feeds on itself. This concern itself is what creates the difficulty and what creates and what gives power to this desert. I mentioned to you one time before, quite recently, the interesting fact that the Torah relates that when Eden came out of the Yam Suf, they went for 3 days, there was no water. On the third day they found water in Morah, but it was bitter. And when they found water in Morah, they started to complain. We can't drink the water. So the question is, how did you survive for 3 days without water? The answer is, for 3 days they didn't pay attention to it. They didn't think. They relied on neighbors. They're going. They feel comfortable. How? We don't know. Nothing made them alert. I alerted them to the fact that there was something unnatural happening. Then when they saw water, they remembered that the human being is supposed to drink water. And then they started questioning, hey, what happened? How are we going to survive? There's no water. This is a principle that is true in Jewish life. Moshe is saying to them, the minute you start admitting that this is a big desert, this is going to create pressure on you. From the bigger desert, you're going to go down to recognizing that there are snakes in it, poisonous snakes. And from the snakes, you're going to recognize that there are srofim, there are fire snakes. And from the fire snakes, you're going to recognize that there are scorpions. And ultimately, there's no water. The Rebbe in that Sikha compares it directly with the Golus. Even not in Golus. What does it mean we're in Golus? It means that we're surrounded by all the nations in the world. And we are but a speck, a little droplet in the entire spectrum, the human spectrum. And this is a big desert that has a completely different view of life, and it opposes our way of life. The desert is a posik that the midbar, the desert is asher lo yoshev Odom shom. Odom cannot live in a desert. Odom, which means which is the intellect, the emunah, and desert don't go together. This is a desert. A desert means that you don't see life. You don't see godly presence. And this is what the whole Golus is. It's a spiritual darkness. So when we face this Golus, we have two ways to look at it. One is, remember how we went through the desert in the midbar, and that we didn't have to pay attention to it. We did our thing and we went right through it. Or we are going to stop there and say, I can't deal with it. I have to become partners. I have to live in the desert. I have to join, so to speak, the Golus mentality. I have to cooperate with it. I can't stand up to it. The minute I start cooperating with it, I lose touch with the spiritual values of things. The minute I start accepting the principles of Golus, then I lose touch with my spiritual values. And then there is a complete descent. The Rebbe describes the three levels: Nochosh, Sorov, Yaakov. Nochosh, all of these three have venom. And what venom is? They have poison in their mouth. And it says that the Nochosh, the venom of the Nochosh is hot. The venom of the Sorov is even more hot. On the other hand, the venom of the scorpion is a cold venom. The Rebbe explains what's the significance of this. The significance of it is that when you get involved in the world and you become excited, you become involved to the point where it excites you. It heats you up. So then this heat takes you away from excitement in ruchnis. It becomes like a venom, it becomes like a poison. Then there is a lower stage where it is not just takes you away, but it burns up. It's sorrow. It burns up completely your sense of ruchnis. You begin to really consider the reality as something which is part of the world. You forget about ruchnistic reality. All because you got scared. It's a huge desert. It's too big. I can't deal with it. And then the third stage is when you go down to the Akrov, which is a scorpion, and he gives you a cold venom. Cold, even though they're both venoms, but cold is the worst. As long as a person is hot, he shows signs of life. Life, as long as the person is alive, he can be revived, he can be brought back. Once he's completely cold, he's completely unaffected, then he's like indifferent. He's indifferent. And there's no way to break through. This is called a loss of life completely. So Moshe Rabbeinu is telling us in this Farbrengen, that we have to know that going into Eretz Yisrael, going into the world, does not change a thing. The strength with which we're going, the purpose for which we're going is exactly the same. We have to go with the same confidence and know what we have to accomplish. Confidence, surety, be assured of this. For this purpose, Moshe Rabbeinu goes on and says further. You may think that while I was in the desert, I was a very good boy. I sat and learned, I did good things, and that's why the Rebbe protected me. But now I'm going to Eretz Yisrael, who knows what's going to be? I'm going to be busy in business, in my work, and I'm not doing Hashem's work. So Moshe Rabbeinu is reminding you should remember that throughout the desert journey you were constantly rebellious. You were coming to Eretz Yisrael not because you're so righteous and so good. And there's an expression in this passage which is really shocking. Moshe Rabbeinu says to the Yidden, he says to them, you were rebellious against Hashem from the moment I knew you. Can you imagine Moshe Rabbeinu saying that to the Yidden? Moshe Rabbeinu, the great Ohev Yisrael, the lover of Eden, he put his life on the line for the Eden. He says, but you are a rebellious bunch. From the moment I knew you, you were rebellious. And this is exactly, if you go back and reflect a little bit and see what happened. In Mitzrayim, when Moshe Rabbeinu first came to the Eden and said, I'm going to Paro, and I'm going to demand that he let you go. The Eden said to them, leave us alone. Don't bother us. Leave us alone. And then by the Yamsuf, when Eden were by the Yamsuf, and the Mitzrayim, the Egyptians were chasing them. And Eden were faced over here, and the Egyptians on one side, the Yamsuf on the other side. What did they come to tell Moshe? What did they tell Moshe? Didn't we tell you, leave us alone? With all the miracles that they had experienced, came right back to where they started. Didn't we tell you, leave us alone? So Moshe says, look, there is something special, a special relationship that Hashem has for you. This has proven out throughout the 40 years in the desert, time and again and again and again. So, your state, your status, is not the cause, the reason for you going to Eretz Yisrael. You're going to Eretz Yisrael because Hashem loves you, because Hashem chose you as His nation, because Hashem promised Avram Yitzchak Yankov that He's going to bring you to Eretz Yisrael. This is yours. And with the same strength that you got out of Mitzrayim, with that same strength you're going to go to Eretz Yisrael. So having said that, and they took just a few illustrations from the Pasha. The whole Pasha is full of this evening. We are here, although we're all adults, but essentially in our adult life, we are in the beginning of adult life. But if we reflect, each one of us, going back to the travel, to the journey through which we went until we got to this stage, until we got to this point, where we had some kind of a clarity of what our life is about. We went through childhood, we went through adolescence, we went through the teenage years. We went through such confusion, such loss. And yet, somehow, we made it through. Who cannot say that it was a smooth sail? I always knew where the sails are carrying me. I always knew where I'm going. Everything was clear. In everyone's life, by the time he reaches adulthood, he can remember multiple times when the world seemed to be one dark cloud. I have absolutely no idea what's going on. What is it all about? Where am I going? Especially in the younger years, especially in the teenage years. The teenage is known to be a very difficult period. The reason for that is because a teenager is moving out of childhood and begins to think, and begins to understand that there are serious matters that have to be dealt with, and he does not have the means to deal with them. He has no idea what to do, where to go, and how to get that clarity, that decision. This is why many teenagers, Rahman Islam, and now they go, because they don't have chinuch, they don't have support system, they go into drugs and all that, because they really are at a loss of what's going on. And each one of us went through those turbulent years, went through that desert in human life. And then we come back, we start thinking, all right, so how did I get here? How did I get to a point where I feel, hey, there's a future. I know where I stand. I know what I want. I know the direction I'm going. I still need to plow and I still need to work, but I recognize that I'm on a highway. I'm not in a desert and I'm not in the forest. How did all that happen? How did all that happen? So Moshe Rabbeinu is asking and urging each one of us to reflect on that journey and see in it that there was something way beyond us that was leading the way. Something was holding on, held our hand. Here I was just on the brink of fall, and boom, something came and I didn't fall. I could have fallen, and I didn't fall. In effect, like the Hashem says that every Yid has to go through 42 masois, 42 journeys, we, each one of us, can reflect and see, yes indeed, this is not an easy journey. And by the time we stand on our own feet, we should have the full confidence, not in ourselves, confidence in the reality of being Jewish, the reality of Torah, the reality of Yiddishkeit, the reality of Avodas Hashem. So that when we come to the point where we're facing the next stage, we're facing the time when we have to go into Eretz Yisrael and start building our homes, start building our land, which is also pretty scary. But we know that we have traveled a long way, a long dangerous path to get here. And it wasn't our doing that brought us here. It wasn't our doing. As smart as we are, it was not our doing. It's an interesting world phenomenon in the world. Everybody, there is, so to speak, the recorded history of the modern development of electricity, development of all kinds of different advances in technology and in science. Each one of the great developments occurred unintentionally, inadvertently. You know what I'm saying? Each one. He stumbled upon something, he wasn't even looking for it, he didn't know what he found. Who developed this world? Who developed this world? You know, I'm sure, what it says in the Zohar, the Rebbe mentions this, that at a certain time on the 6th millennium, there's going to be a breakthrough in world knowledge, in natural knowledge. This happened completely unexpectedly, miraculously. This is how the world we're looking at is Hashem's world. You know, we think, oh, a horse, that's a natural being. Hashem created the horse. A car does nothing to do with Hashem. This is a human development. This is human ingenuity. That's the silliest thing to say. I'm sorry?
Each cockroach of the floor is much more sophisticated than the best car in
That's definitely true.
They're cheaper on gas too.
I'm sorry?
They're cheaper on gas.
That's also true. The point is not that. The point we're talking about in terms of supporting the human life. The cockroach does not give much support to human life. A car does. And as a result of all the developments, like the Rebbe said, they identified the radio wave, and as a result of that, it united the whole world. All that is clearly a godly presence. Besides the truth that all these powers exist because this is a godly world. This is not just a natural world, this is a godly world, this is an infinite world. And that's why all these powers exist, this is why we find all of these things. But even the method by which we found them was clearly a godly intervention. This is true on the world scale, this is true on every individual scale. And everyone is urged by Moshe Rabbeinu in this parsha to reflect on his own continuous experience. And recognize that, yes, you are going to face challenges throughout your lifetime. It's never going to stop. but the strength to face them is provided. How's it provided? Not that you provided the means by which to answer the question, no. The strength, the moral strength, the character strength, the emunah, the insight in life, that is provided for. This is what the desert did for the Eden. The desert did not teach the Eden how to plow the field, how to wage war, how to build homes. Didn't apply them at all. How to establish a government. The desert didn't teach them that. But the desert did teach them how to develop and how to view life with strength and confidence. And how to and pursue what you need to pursue with diligence, without fear. A few years ago, in these lectures, we discussed the question of self-respect. It's on the internet. I don't know if any one of you had a chance to look it up. What is the principle of self-respect in Torah, from a Torah perspective? This is the whole thing of self-respect is held up as a big principle in psychology, that a person has to have self-respect in order to be able to be productive and face the world. In Torah also there is such a concept, but it's a completely different basis, a completely different view and understanding. Because the concept of self-respect is stupid. A person respecting himself. On the contrary, we are taught I'm nothing. The minute a person starts thinking, oh, koiche, like Moshe Rabbeinu says in today's parsha, koiche v'yotzim yoder etzem zachai zazeh. Once you're successful, you're going to start saying that you, with your own prowess, with your own abilities, built all of this up. This is going to lead you to destruction. That's not what it is. What then is the principle of self-respect? The principle of self-respect really lies in the recognition that I have respect and I have a sense of value in the world, in life, as long as I feel that the world and the life in the world and pursuing what you have to do in the world is a valuable thing. This is the source of inspiration for a person. This is the spirit. This is the principle of respect. A person respects himself when he recognizes that he is entrusted with important duties and that he is living in a world that has tremendous value and purpose. This principle that the world is valued and that life is significant, and it's so significant to the extent that Hashem himself is involved in every step of the way, this Yidden learned in the desert. This is what they absorbed in the desert. This is what each one of us has learned throughout our journey to coming here. And this is what the entire development that's going on in the world represents. So to conclude and to summarize, this Moshe Rabbeinu's Verbringung. No Shlomo HaMelech wrote the Sefer Mishlei. Mishlei Shlomo. The Proverbs. And in Mishlei, he describes it. It's deep, but effectively describing the various perceptions that moral and immoral, various perceptions that people can have in the world. And ultimately he says, as Elokim Yirah, that's mitzvahs of Shmoy, fear Hashem and keep his mitzvahs, Zeh Kol Ha'odam. This is the person. A person can be building huge towers, building a whole world. But what is really a person? When do you say that the person has self-respect, has a valuable life? When his deeds are significant. When his thoughts are significant. When his faith is significant. That is the person. It makes a difference what we think. It makes a difference what we say. It makes a difference what we do. It makes a difference what we believe. Because our faith is representative of our soul. That is a person. This is the strength of the world. This is the life of the world. So whatever we have to face in the future, we have to go. Everyone, the future is constantly changing for everyone. Whether you're a young man like yourself or you have a family name, but the whole time, a living person is constantly facing a new world. It's a new world. He is not prepared for it. But he's prepared for it morally. He's prepared for it morally that he can face any eventuality without knowing what is coming. That's the trick of life. You don't have to know ahead of time. And there's no way to know anything ahead of time. What is necessary to know is that the reality doesn't change. The truth doesn't change. And whatever is presented to you is presented to you for the purpose of enhancing and bringing out and revealing that truth. With this, we can face the world. With this, we can face our own world. So, we are now coming, so to speak, to the end of the year. It's a little early, but nevertheless, the union of the Golus, the union of Tshuva, the union of strengthening oneself is present now, and it's just around the corner to face up to it. We have to face and approach the new year, Mitzvah Shem, with confidence, with assuredness, to get greater clarity in our path, greater clarity in our faith, so that we are prepared for the next stage. So that when we go into the desert, we're not going to be scared of it. We're not going to be shaken up. We're going to look for ways to travel through it and do what we have to do. The Rebbe will send us each one hatzlocha and bracha in their path, in their effort, and ultimately the hatzlocha and bracha for Klal Yisrael, that we should all and ultimately break through from the Golus into the Geula, into Eretz Yisrael, and then Moshe Rabbeinu himself will show us the way. That's right. That's exactly right.